Thank you again, everyone, for attending tonight. We really appreciate it. This is part of our monthly public information talks on mental health that we have the second Tuesday of the month. And as we just indicated, we do record these. So for anybody that you think might be interested in this talk or any of our other talks, you can go on YouTube, NAMI Santa Fe, and find all of our talks. And this one will be posted probably within the next 3 or 4 days. So the title of my talk is Better Mental Health Now, Tips to Leading a Happier, More Resilient Life. And I've structured this to really be accessible and relevant to the general public. It's not just for those people who deal with a more serious mental health challenge, but it's for everyone in general about things that I have either researched or found personally helpful in dealing with mental health challenges. A lot of us went through a big challenge, whether we got COVID or not, during those really 2 brutal years of isolation and fear and antagonism and all that. And a lot of people these days, studies have shown, are really struggling with their mental health, even if it's not gotten to the severe level of being a clinical mental illness. Basically, Jessica just went over my vita, so I don't need to go over that anymore. And just getting started, some sort of foundation, if you will. Whether you deal with a mental illness or just want to maintain your mental health, you might find these tips helpful in staying emotionally resilient and being as happy as possible. I like to think that we have a mental health immune system, just like we have a physical health immune system. Because of COVID, there was all this focus on having a robust immune system to fight off getting COVID. And I think we also have a mental health immune system that can make us more resilient during times of stress and times when we're feeling down, that hopefully if we keep our immune system, our mental health immune system robust and vibrant, that maybe we can fight off not having to deal with a more serious mental health condition. I do want to emphasize that if you feel you are or may be dealing with a mental illness, like depression, please seek help from a mental health professional. Certainly this talk is not meant to replace going and seeing a mental health professional. If you or a loved one feel like you've been experiencing a mental health condition that's lasted for a while and that you want to get more attention to. I like to say, take what works for you and leave the rest. It's kind of my mantra in life. So some of the things that I offer as tips or advice may work for you, you may relate to, and others you may not. And that's fine. I do ask that you look at them or view them with an open mind and maybe give them a try. And if they don't work for you, or if you really can't relate to them, then simply let them go. But hopefully there's a fair amount of what I cover tonight that you'll find useful or helpful in your everyday life. A quick note about alcoholism, addictions, and even moderate usage of substances. I don't directly address them in this talk. That's obviously a whole nother subject, although there's often a relationship between substance use and mental health conditions. I just ask that you recognize that even moderate use of substances like alcohol or cannabis can compromise your mental health. I know they've compromised my mental health in the past. So I start off with what I call the foundation for positive mental health, establishing and maintaining connection. And the theory is, or the thought is, that many of us have lost connection with the things that keep us emotionally grounded and happy in life. And there's been a lot of research and a lot of studies and books that have come out all around this notion of connection and the fact that we're not connected to ways that are nurturing and grounding like we used to be. And so I've put together these, I call them the 4 principles of connection: connection with yourself, connection with others, connection with nature, and then some sort of spiritual or religious connection. So what is this about staying connected to yourself? It seems like kind of a bizarre concept, but the notion is that it's important to be at peace with and loving and liking who you are just the way you are. Embrace the notion that you're a unique individual and are worthy just the way you are of love and happiness. We all are. and that you have your own suite of qualities, perspectives, abilities that nobody else has quite the way you do. And you should really reflect on that and try to appreciate it if you can. And it kind of gets a little trite, or you hear it quite a bit often, that it's really important to treat yourself as you would your own best friend. Often we're the hardest on ourselves. I know I've been hard on myself, particularly when I've struggled with depression. We get those internal critical voices that saying, I'm not worthy, or I'm not competent, or, people are better than I am. And to me, it's just really important to think about, would you be saying those same things to your best friend? And probably the answer is no. And some of us under Forgive Yourself have had behaviors or done things in the past in relationships or what have you that we regret or wish we had never done. And it's really important to forgive yourself for those things and focus on living the life you want today, and not live in the past and not live with all that regret about things maybe you had done in the past that you weren't proud of or feel guilty about or regretful of. So connection to others, more challenging. And yes.
Sorry to ask, but were you able to share your screen with the presentation?
Are you not seeing my presentation?
Yeah, we're not seeing that on our end.
Oh my gosh. So that's not good. So I thought I had.
I see you.
Yeah, we see you, and that's working, but in case.
Well, that's weird because I pulled it up and I thought I had shared. So let me go back. Thank you for bringing that up. So where is share in the bottom? Oh, share screen. Well, let's thank you for speaking up. That was how about that?
Yes.
Does that work?
Yeah, perfect.
Wow.
Okay.
Good job. All right. So we'll just quickly let you know what you missed, but you didn't miss a lot. So we did that, connection with yourself, connection with others. Yeah, the visuals get much better, so you didn't really miss much. Okay, good. Thank you for speaking up there, Jessica. That was bad. It's okay. So you can see it now fine, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so connection to others, and this is extremely challenging in today's remote virtual world. It was tough even before COVID, but since COVID, we're not as interacting with each other in person as much as we used to, and we're basically, all of us are social beings. Even the introverts are social beings, and we need to interact with and be around other people, ideally in person. I mean, Zoom's great and phone calls are great, but you might know about the feel-good hormone we get from being around other people in person called oxytocin. And it's a mood enhancer in our brains that we basically don't get online. And this is extremely important for people like me who live alone, maybe are retired like I am, that aren't getting that regular in-person interaction with people on a regular basis. And it's important to fight loneliness by being with others. And as I mentioned, our civilized world has become increasingly isolating from each other. We have hectic schedules, we get an incredible amount of emails, hours and hours on our devices, remote from each other, not with each other in person. And so it's really important to really, try to connect with people in person, and not just with friends and family and the people at work, but there's also this notion of the importance of being part of a community, belonging to a social group that meets regularly. Something as simple as a book club or hobbies or a sports group or a support group, or of course, church, 12-step meetings, anything where people get together on a regular basis and get to know each other for a common purpose. It could be, like I said, something as simple as being a Dallas Cowboys fan and getting together with a group that watches the game each week. And fellowship, that nurturing sense of fellowship that we get from being a part of a community, part of a group, is not just a church term, but of course it's really very prevalent for those who do regularly attend church. So here's a book that came out 3 years ago from the 19th Surgeon General of the United States, Vivek Murthy. Title of the book, Together: the healing power of human connection in a sometimes lonely world. And I have the book. I just got it. I haven't started reading it yet, but it got good reviews, and it's really all about this notion that we really need to be with each other, ideally in person, to have that sense of connection that maybe some of us have lost. So then the third one is connection to earth or nature. This is one that's very near and dear to my heart. Earth is, of course, our home, the ultimate source of all life, including our own, the ultimate source of everything we have, every technological thing we have and enjoy, and food and what have you. Everything has come ultimately from the earth. And for hundreds of thousands of years, we humans were intricately and intimately tied to nature. Our lives depended on it daily. But it's only in the last 100 years or so that we've become mostly indoor beings. I mean, we've lost touch with the rhythm and cycles of nature and the sun's movement during the year and the moon cycles and bird singing and growing our own food. We're just really out of touch with the nature, the very essence of life on this planet. And there's actually a real life clinical condition that's called nature deficit disorder. I think there's doctors in the United Kingdom that actually prescribe people who've been struggling with their mental health, prescribe them to go for a walk outdoors, not just give them a happy antidepressant pill or whatever, but say, hey, get outdoors for half hour, 40 minutes a day and go for a walk. So I do feel it's important to reconnect or possibly connect for the first time with nature. And nature's right outside your front door. You don't have to be a killer hiker and going off into the wilderness area and backpacking. You can enjoy nature right outside your front door or in your backyard. And I like this Japanese philosophy that's called Shinrin Yoku, and it literally means forest bathing. And it's about really just taking in the energy and the spirit of being out in nature and the energy that trees and shrubs and plants and flowers have. And I know I call it ecotherapy, and I've found it to be enormously helpful for me. And then last but certainly not least, spiritual or religious connection. If you already have a spiritual religious practice, that's great. That's wonderful. Maintain it or even enhance it as you feel inspired. And while respecting those who embrace organized religion, having a spiritual orientation or practice is not necessarily about believing in God or a higher power. I know for a long time I rejected religion and spirituality for a long time in my life for a variety of reasons. And then I realized, and it was part of a group therapy program I was part of for quite a while, I realized that the beauty, diversity, and sheer magic of nature was my spirituality. And so I've embraced that as a main part of my spiritual aspect in life. And then more recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've gotten into yoga, not just for my own mental health and physical health, of course, but I also find a nice nurturing spiritual component to yoga as well. For atheists or those that adamantly reject or get turned off by any concept of spirit, no problem. I get it. Let it go. Again, don't focus on those things that don't work for you or that you can't relate to. Try to focus on those that you can relate to. And this is a really interesting book that came out in 2018 when I was first writing about connection, and I first started this journey of sharing my feelings about this issue with others, more focused on depression. This guy, Johan Hari, wrote the book Lost Connections, Why You're Depressed and How to Find Hope. And it was a New York Times bestseller. Really, really good book. You can see some pretty major names have endorsed it and embraced it. And so again, when I do research all over the place, I hear about this importance of connection that many of us have lost in one form or another. Let me see if I can move this down to the bottom. Yes, I can. So I like to say it's important to take charge of your mental health, whether we're just sad or unhappy with our lives, dealing with some sort of short-term, down spell, or dealing with a clinical mental illness. It's really ultimately up to us ourselves to do something about it. And we do really have to take charge of our mental health, just like we take charge of our physical health. We'll have others that will help us along the way, friends and family and professionals, medical professionals mainly, but we're in charge, and we do need to empower ourselves to be in charge. And again, I know this is having been there in the deep, dark throes of depression. It can be really hard to have any notion of taking charge when you are exhausted and don't feel good about yourself. And that can mean something as simple as, going for a 20-minute walk, taking a shower and, dressing halfway nicely and, getting out of bed or off the couch. And so it's really important, particularly for those that are struggling really more severely with their mental health, to praise yourself for taking actions to get healthy and happy, however small. Again, that's part of just being connected with yourself and being at peace with who you are and what you're trying to do for yourself. Seems to have frozen up. Why is that? There we go. Oops, let me go page up here. So here or there, I've got a list of 20 tips that are a little bit more specific. And they're all basically pretty straightforward, and most of them, if not all of them, I found helpful. And the first 18 are geared toward everybody for their own mental health, whether you're dealing with just a downtime or want to be happier than you have been, or whether it's someone who's dealing with a more severe mental illness like PTSD or depression or anxiety, that sort of thing. And the first is to really, be patient. There's no silver bullet here. Nothing's gonna make everything great, right away. Although it sure is an appealing notion. When I first dealt with depression, I was hoping, I got on Prozac, the very first antidepressant. I was hoping, I'd be all better in 2 or 3 weeks, and it didn't quite work like that. And so positive change takes time, especially when it comes to a mental health challenge, and accept that reality rather than fight it or be upset about it. And it can take a while. It can take a few weeks or even longer to have, some of these things that I think are helpful really kick in and start to really be helpful. So again, getting together with others. We're living more and more of our lives physically removed from others. School, work, Zoom, meetings, having things delivered. We're spending a lot more time at home, whether it's working or going to school. I mean, I was very grateful for Zoom during the pandemic. I'm grateful for Zoom that you're all here and taking advantage of it tonight, but it's just, again, not the same as being with others in person. And there's that notion about the feel-good brain hormone oxytocin, which hopefully counters another brain chemical called cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Isolating is very common when we're down. Fight it to the best you can when you feel up to it. I know times when I've dealt with more severe depression, it's been really hard to not isolate, but I have really forced myself to get out of the house and at least physically be around others, if not actually interacting with them. I've gone to the library or the gym to work out or just to read or do things on my computer, just to physically be around other people. Third, can't emphasize this enough, get out of the house. As we spend more and more time at home, this becomes even more important, especially of those that struggle with a more serious mental health challenge. Cabin fever is real. Don't let it set in. If you can get out, a couple times a day for a 15 or 20-minute walk in your neighborhood without your smartphone or turn it off, that's really important. I have a real concern about particularly our wireless devices and our smartphones with respect to them not being as healthy for us and being connected to people by being so focused, and some people feel like they're addicted to their devices. And I think there's some real truth to that, and we really need to think about how we're using our wireless smartphones. They're certainly a great resource for safety. They're a great resource for information, but they can often be the opposite of being mindful or being present, if you've heard of those concepts for mental health. And getting out of the house, again, can just be gardening or just hanging out in your backyard. And and taking in, what's going on in your backyard with respect to the wind rustling the leaves, the birds chirping. I've been known to just stare at an ant pile with the ants moving around for 15 or 20 minutes, just to really be connected to life outdoors. Number 4, be wary of social media. Everyone's life is awesome on Facebook and some of the other, social medias. Everyone likes to, sort of post things that make them look like they're the most popular, intelligent, successful person. Rarely do we see people put, things that they're struggling with online. And it's easy to think your life isn't that great by comparison, and much more so if you're feeling down. And of course, there's lots of angry, disrespectful discourse in social media. Try to avoid it. I know I've found myself sort of sucked into Facebook and spent a lot more time on it than I really should have been, and gotten involved with angry, hateful discourse with people that I disagree with and vice versa. And it just has not been healthy for me. And so I've done my best to put a limit on that. Sometimes successful, sometimes not. I try to have device timeouts a few times a day, even if it's just for an hour. Like when I go to the gym, I don't bring my cell phone with me. I leave it in the car. I notice a lot of people at the gym are sort of focused on their cell phones in between their sets that they're working out. And I've just tried not to do that. One big exception about social media and doing things online is there are some really good online support groups that can be quite helpful. NAMI during the pandemic had online support groups because we weren't able to meet in person. So there are those out there that can be very helpful. Here's an interesting guest commentary that appeared in the Santa Fe New Mexican by a sophomore at Santa Fe High named Hanby Park. And he talked about revealing the dark side of social media and talked about how addictive and how detrimental to teenagers' mental health, TikTok and the other social medias can be. And he brought up in his guest commentary that Seattle Public Schools is suing the social media companies and blaming social media for, quote, for worsening mental health, anxiety, and depression. And that stating that the addictive algorithms of the social media companies employ are harmful to mental health. And I do have a concern that it's harmful, can be harmful for all of us, not just our youth, but they seem particularly subject to it. I wanted to say that if you do have any questions, we're going to have some Q&A at the end. I'll be sure to leave some time for it. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, and Jessica will keep an eye on them and ask them when we get to there. 5, limit your news intake. 90% of news is negative, whether on TV or online. Consider a news timeout, or at least significantly cutting back on your news intake. I used to be a complete news junkie, ingesting and consuming everything I could on news, and I knew it wasn't that healthy for me. And so I stay informed, but I've really cut back on what I read and what I take. And I like to ask myself, if I see a headline scrolling through Facebook or in the newspaper, do I really need to read this article, or is it just going to get me upset or angry? And a lot of times the answer is, no, I don't need to read it because it's probably going to get me upset or angry. 6, get outside, sun, fresh air, sitting by a creek. They're all mood enhancers. There's that ecotherapy. And it can be just a walk in your neighborhood with your dog or by yourself. Again, if you can leave your cell phone at home, or maybe for safety reasons, keep it with you, but put it on airplane mode or something so you're not constantly looking at it. You'll be more present, and you'll be able to take in and be more mindful, take in sort of everything about Mother Nature that is happening just right in your own neighborhood. And again, gardening and landscaping can be extremely beneficial, whether it's a vegetable garden or just perennials and annuals. Soil has serotonin in it, which is a mood enhancing brain chemical that is one of the main chemicals involved with antidepressant medications. Move your body. We hear this all the time. There's quite a bit of overlap actually between maintaining good physical health and mental health. And any form of exercise will not only help you feel better, but you'll feel better about yourself for having done it. And just 2 20-minute walks a day can make a big difference. If you're game for and capable of aerobic exercise, getting that heart rate up for 20 to 20 plus minutes a day can be a really big help. I know I found it extremely helpful, particularly in dealing with depression. I used to be a big runner, go for a half hour, 40-minute run and get my heart rate up and sweat. You get those endorphins. That's what the runner's high is about. That really can help lift your mood, and it would help lift my mood for quite a few hours afterwards. It, wouldn't make my depression completely go away, but it was enormous help in lifting my mood. If you can exercise and you can get out in the morning, and only once a day, try to do so in the morning. It'll just make you feel better for the rest of the day. If you can't, if you have to wait until you get off of work, that certainly works as well. Number 8, really important, ignore those critical voices in your head. A lot of us get them. Critical, you don't know what you're doing, you're not worthy, all those things. Just ignore them. Just really tell yourself they're not real. Sometimes I tell them just to get lost. They don't know what they're talking about. And meditation and simple deep breathing techniques can help quiet those voices and can help distract you from those voices. Guided meditation, the type where someone sort of walks you through the meditation rather than you just doing it on your own, is great for beginners. And frankly, I still do guided meditation. I've still struggled with doing meditation just on my own, but even 10 or 15 minutes of meditation it can be really, really helpful. Self-help reading. There's a lot of books out there that are all about self-help and living a more healthy, nurturing life. A real popular one is called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Probably a lot of you know about that one. And then there's these personal growth journey novels like The Alchemist by Paul Coelho, or my mom turned me on to Pearl S. Buck's The Good Earth, which is just a classic. I think it was written in the 30s. If you're familiar with the Arc bookstore in Santa Fe, I've gone there and just sort of loitered around their books and grabbed one and took it home, and was generally pretty glad that I did and glad that I read it. Healthy diet, again, it's often emphasized, often ignored. And one real big thing to keep in mind is sugar has been shown to worsen not just physical health, but mental health. They've actually started to show that sugar is actually worse for us than saturated fats. And so, I've had a sugar tooth my entire life, and have in the past drank way too much soda and really too fond of ice cream. And it was a struggle, but I got both of them significantly out of my life, not completely, but yeah, significantly so. 11, go easy on the alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and some other drugs are depressants. So even if you're just a moderate user, they can really exacerbate a mental health condition. And of course, cannabis now is both being prescribed medically and is available legally, recreationally. And I'll just argue that it's not benign just because it's legal or prescribed by a doctor, not benign with respect to potentially impacting one's mental health. I knew for years I was way too fond of marijuana, and I know that it significantly compromised my mental health and made my challenge with depression that much more significant. So I just asked you to give it some thought. Again, it's a whole nother topic, but there are so many people that struggle both with a mental illness and with some sort of substance use addiction. And it's certainly hard to get over the mental illness if one is a significant user of alcohol or other drugs. Volunteer and be of service of others. The Dalai Lama, a famous Tibetan Buddhist, has my favorite quote, which is, if you want to make others happy, be compassionate. If you want to make yourself happy, be compassionate. And that can mean volunteering at a soup kitchen, for your favorite nonprofit, volunteering at your church, helping your friends or family with a project or chore, but just being of service to others can be so rewarding. I know it has been for me, and it's one of the reasons that I volunteer with NAMI and with the LifeLink. I found it really rewarding. 13, embrace acceptance. this can be a tough one, but much of what goes on in the world and much of what happens in our personal lives, we have no control over. And we just have to accept that fact. And it doesn't mean that we're complacent or we're apathetic about those things. I know in the past I've let the violence and some of the injustices and the poverty and things that are going on around the world, and the assault on our environment really be kind of a fuel for my depression. And I really let it tear me up inside. And it wasn't until I did find a way to accept that I wasn't going to single-handedly change all of that, that I could really be more at peace with myself and with my life. And if you have things in your history that you regret again, or that you feel ashamed of or wish you had never done, we can't change those. And it's important to process that painful or regrettable, but try to live for today. And by saying that, I don't mean to belittle, downplay past trauma. Some people went through some enormous trauma in their childhood, and it can be a lifelong time of dealing with that trauma. And again, acceptance does not mean apathy. That, you know, you still care about those things, and you don't even need to be complacent, but you just have to accept that you're not going to single-handedly make all of those things go away. Embrace gratitude. We often focus on the negative aspects of our lives. It's part of, I think, the human condition. And it really is important to focus on the positive aspects of your life. And all of us, even if we're struggling with certain parts of our life, have positive aspects we can reflect on. Therapists will often encourage you to make a gratitude list of the things that you're grateful for, and to help you reacquaint yourself with the good in your life and not just focus on the bad. This one is really important, and I thought was sort of silly when I first got introduced to it, but remember to breathe and breathe deeply. Most of us shallow breathe during our day, not really fully oxygenating our body. And that's the beauty of exercise. It forces us to breathe deeply and get oxygen to all parts of our body, including the brain. Getting oxygen up to our brain is extremely important. And deep breathing techniques can reduce stress and help us stay calm. And it's really an easy form of meditation. One technique that I actually learned from Andrew Weil, Dr. Andrew Weil, if you're familiar with him, is 4-7-8 nostril breathing. And that's where you close your eyes. So you're focusing on your breath and you're not focusing on what you're looking at. And you inhale deeply for 4 counts, hold your breath for 7 counts, exhale slowly for 8 counts. And doing this even just for a minute or two, I like to try to get in 10 or 20 cycles of it, can be really, really helpful. Andrew Weil was here about 6 or 7 years ago, and he got the entire Lensic Theater here in Santa Fe doing 4-7-8 breathing. I've found it really helpful. I've done it in stressful situations when I've been in meetings. If we were together in person, I would have us all do it together right now. But I ask you to give it a try and maybe add it to your repertoire. If you're into yoga or want to even think about getting into yoga, there's all sorts of deep breathing techniques. It's called pranayama, a Sanskrit word that many yoga classes will focus on, in addition to the physical postures that yoga classes do. Dealing with depression, and I've got a couple things on dealing with depression and other mental illnesses. First is individual therapy. It helps, it works. It's important to be completely honest with your therapist. I know one time when I was frankly thinking about suicide and my depression was really, really bad, my therapist would ask me flat out if I had been contemplating suicide, and I was so ashamed, I lied and said no. And here, this was a therapist that I was paying to help me get better, and I wasn't even honest with her. So it's really important to be honest with your therapist. And if you're not clicking with your therapist, find another. And that's fine. Don't feel like your therapist, even though you've gone to them for 3 or 4 times, that they're sort of like your best friend or anything. It can be hard to click with a therapist. And we've got on our website a section dealing with how to find a therapist. And actually the Psychology Today magazine, if you're familiar with that, if you go on their website, you can put in, you can click on find a therapist and put in our zip code, and they have a whole listing with reviews and things like that. 17, something near and dear to my heart is group therapy and group support and support groups. NAMI has 2 free support groups, one for those struggling with their mental health and one for those family and friends that help them with their struggle. Group therapy, which is usually facilitated by a licensed therapist, is dynamic and powerful in a way that's different than individual therapy. I've gotten a lot out of group therapy. It makes you feel like you're not alone. You're not the only one dealing with the challenge. Others benefit from your story and your feedback, and you benefit from theirs. Confidentiality is pledged and is sacrosanct. So nothing, it's like Las Vegas. Nothing is supposed to leave what is said in group therapy or in support groups. 18, as I've mentioned, praise yourself when you take positive steps for your mental health. Pat yourself on the back. Don't take those for granted. That's an important part of one's recovery or just feeling happy and better in general. Just a quick word about antidepressant medications. I don't encourage nor discourage people in taking medications. It's a very, very personal decision. I do encourage people to do research. In general, if you're considering the medication route, I urge you to go to a psychiatrist and not your primary care physician. Psychiatrists are much, much more knowledgeable about the various antidepressant medications that are out there than a primary care physician can be. Just know that with the current antidepressant medications out there, they can take 3 to 5 weeks before they kick in and have some positive effect. And so you do need to be patient with them. So finally, back to addressing everybody in general, pets and animals, particularly for those that live alone, but for those who have pets, dogs, cats, ferrets, what have you, they can be extremely rewarding for our mental health. They really are a form of connecting with nature. Equine therapy is actually a real thing where people interact with the energy of horses. I did some equine therapy a number of years ago. Dogs or cats are great companions. And again, just caring for another human being can be really helpful. That's my dog, Lobo, on the right. He's just right in front of me right now in my living room. And I adopted him a week before COVID lockdown 3 years ago. And he really did help my life during COVID, particularly during that first year and a half of significant isolation. Before I end, I wanted to say if you have any questions, again, feel free to put them in the chat. Or if you have things that I haven't covered that you have found helpful for your own mental health, feel free to put those in the chat and share them with others. So finally, I wanted to focus on quality sleep. It's probably the most underappreciated physical and mental health need. A lot of people seem to brag about what little sleep they can get by with. I only have to get 4 or 5 hours sleep, but really studies have shown that both for our physical and mental health, that getting a good quality 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep is extremely important. And you can read all about sleep hygiene and what it takes to have as good a night's sleep as possible. A dark room is key, and getting off of your devices at least a half an hour beforehand. Particularly for older people, if you're having sleep issues or feel like you're having sleep issues, you can get a take-home sleep analysis from your doctor, something you just have on overnight to test for sleep apnea, because that can be a real physical impairment to good quality sleep. And so with that, I'll wrap up and just emphasize, be well and be happy. You deserve to be. I really appreciate you joining this talk. And I will turn it over to Jessica. And Jessica, if we have any questions in the chat or any comments, feel free to share them with everyone.
Okay, first, Craig, thank you so much. And I wanted to mention to everyone, you had mentioned the pets and animals and equine therapy. And there is a local nonprofit called My Little Horse Listener in town here. And they've actually offered to do free equine therapy to anybody in our NAMI community. So you can just go out there and they'll help you work with the horses And yeah, they really want to work with us. So I'll put some information in the chat about how to contact me if anybody wants to get connected with them. So it's a really nice offer. And yeah, I can't see if anyone, there's no questions in the chat, but I can't see if there's anyone's hand is up. But maybe if you want to
Yeah,
not
if you have a question, put it in the chat or just raise your hand and take yourself off mute.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if you have anything that I haven't covered that you found helpful for your own mental health, it could be anything. A lot of people like singing and singing in a group. And a lot of people like upbeat music and just feel good type of music.
Yeah, my question, Craig, was what if someone's feeling just completely overwhelmed and they know they need to, make some healthy changes, but they don't know where to start? What would you recommend as a first step?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, I just laid out 18, ignoring the group therapy, and I just laid out sort of 18 ideas. And I would say that they should sort of, look at those things and see which ones initially appeal to them more. And some of them are active ideas like, getting out of the house and getting with others. And some are simply just ways of looking at life with respect to acceptance and gratitude and things like that. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed. I know I've used that word a lot, particularly when I've been dealing with depression. But, I think one of the first things to do is, share your struggle with someone who you trust, who loves you and who you love, whether it's a family member, but let others know, don't be ashamed or shy about sharing that you're struggling or that you'd like to improve your happiness in life and get their feedback and see what thoughts they have. But yeah, I would just say, look at sort of the list and see which ones maybe are the most appealing to you and, start off with those. I really do feel for those who maybe are more sedentary than they realize they should be, that they really should, be moving their bodies more, that, that's a really important first step, because any form of exercise, and again, it can be just a nice 20-minute walk in your neighborhood and getting your, heart rate up a little bit can be really, really healthy mentally and physically. And the fact that you're getting outdoors and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I want to interject something here. Thank you, Craig. This is wonderful. I mean, you've put your all into this, and having lived it, I know this is all your truth, and could be others as well. But in the case of somebody just really feeling overwhelmed, we have other resources out there that can help. And this last year in July, we came out with a 988 number. It used to be, people think it's a substitute for the suicide prevention or suicide lifeline, but it actually also deals with mental health crisis. And a crisis can be whatever you think a crisis, a crisis for one person may not be a crisis for another. So know that resource is out there, and you can just call 988. And I think in New Mexico, you get connected to the New Mexico Crisis and Access Line, right, which offers you 24/7 trained counselors who can talk with you and then determine if it really is a crisis. They can get help for you, or just talk. Sometimes it's just in the middle of the night, you might just need to talk to somebody. So, remember the 988. Remember, you can also call New Mexico Crisis at 1-855-NM-CRISIS as well. So know that those resources is out there if you just need somebody at that moment to talk to.
Yeah, thank you for that, Betty. That's really great. And again, feel free, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat. I did want to give a shout out to next month, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. NAMI Santa Fe, in conjunction with NAMI New Mexico, is holding a fundraising walk for mental health on Saturday, May 20th, at Alto Street Park, which is the Bicentennial Park right behind the outdoor swimming pool. We encourage all of you to register and join us. We've had a good time the last couple of years we've done the walk, and information on that is on our website. Excuse me.
Thank you for that, Craig.
Yeah, we had some comments I just wanted to share. Sherry wrote and said, "Thank you, Craig, for your vulnerability and a knowledgeable presentation. I too was rescued by my Great Dane Gideon during the pandemic." And then from Mike Owens, he says, "Craig, having lived in a large city with little outdoor space for much of my life, made me appreciate and value outdoor spaces. Having moved to Santa Fe 2 years ago, nature just can't be appreciated enough."
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
could I share?
Yeah,
like
go
to
ahead,
share-
Bob. Sorry.
Hi, calling in from Taos or zooming in.
Oh, great.
There's an organization in Angel Fire called the National Veterans Wellness and Healing Center. And their primary mission is providing retreats for veterans with PTSD for them and their spouses or partners. It's a week long. There's 4 sessions a year. The first one being the end of April here. So I put the link to their website and the retreats page in the chat. I'm going to send it out, and just it's transformative. It's well worth checking it out. Thank you.
Are
Nice.
you involved with them, Bob, or?
I'll be going again. I went in 2018 and I'm going again this time as a battle buddy with another veteran.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, if I may, basically in the morning hours, they do education on different aspects of PTSD. And in the afternoon, they have Reiki and massage therapy and acupuncture. And it's held in Red River at a real fancy place there. So it's no cost to the veteran. They're funded by grants. So yeah, I just want to mention that.
Be a
It's only
cool,
for veterans?
Yes, you must have a PTSD designate, a diagnosis. Your spouse would not have to, but if you need to have that diagnosis by either the VA or another mental health professional, they can diagnose for
Right.
PTSD.
That's wonderful. I'd love to have them at an info meeting, maybe do a talk like this, just to hear what they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jessica, Connie has a question about where our group therapy meetings are held.
Okay, so and I will put some information in the chat. So they're held every Monday. We have a connection group, which is if those who live with a mental illness, that currently is only being held online through Zoom. That's what works for that group right now. So it's Mondays at 3:30. And then for family support, if you're trying to support someone who lives with a mental illness, we have, again, every Monday we have a support group. Half of them are at noon, half of them are at 6 p.m. And we have, most are actually in person, and there's one Zoom a month. So I'll put some information. What you would do is you would sign up for either one, and then once we have your email, we just send you the invitation every week so you know where it is and what's going on.
Tell me about the Connections one.
So yeah, Connections, it's a recovery support group program for adults living with mental illness. It offers respect, understanding, encouragement, and hope. It meets weekly for 90 minutes. It's free of charge. And yeah, it's just, you just need the Zoom link to connect with that.
And it's facilitated by 2 peers who have the lived experience, plus they have training by NAMI to facilitate the program.
Yeah, so I'll put a link to that. So yeah, all we need is an email, and then you'll get the Zoom link every week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, I think we can probably wrap things up then, Jessica.
All right, thank you. This was a great discussion. Thank you, Craig.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
thank
Craig.
you.
Appreciate
Excellent.
it. Thanks for everyone for joining us.